Hi, welcome to Pittsburgh Sportsline. I'm Mike McGlory with Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the producing machine. We'll start out with what's on our minds. And Al, what's on your mind?
Well, first, it's a lot brighter in here now, and I don't think I'm in the shadows. So I want to thank all my fans here that I'm not the real color guy today, and that's not an inside joke. But I do have a couple public announcements. One, if you ever want to eat a great meal, go to the Cozy Cafe, 400 Main Street. And Joe, you're doing a heck of a job pulling up that menu. Look at the prices here. The food's great. This is breakfast. I had a Reuben and sweet potatoes that were just unbelievable. They even made an extra order for me because it's so good. You got to call Andre and Lindsay. Andre's the chef. He's worked at other places and everything. He's just a great chef. The food's delicious. So you have to go there to eat. It's not that far away. They're only open till 3 o'clock. So get in there early and you can beat the traffic. Then the other thing is, I'm involved with a group called Hug-a-thon Pittsburgh, and we have a special night at the races, and this is a fundraising event for numerous charities in Pittsburgh. So mark that on your calendar. You'll hear more of it. June 13th, 6:30 p.m., $25 to get in. You'll get free play at the Meadows, and it'll be a great time. You can eat for free all night, and then we'll go down to the winner's circle and get some pictures with Smoking Jim, Magic Mike, and Chip the Prophet Hayner. What's on my mind is I'm going to beat Chip to the bandwagon. The Pirates are 17-18. Unbelievable. And I'll leave it at that.
Wow. Well, now that the commercial break is over, Jim, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Magic. Hey, soul brother number one, Cozy sounds like a bed and breakfast. But, hey, the Steelers' second-round draft pick, Mike Adams, is really going to enjoy playing in Heinz Field because he plays better on grass. Hey, this week, my main man, Big Ben Roethlisberger. Hey, I love Jim Harbaugh from the San Francisco 49ers, but it should be San Francisco and Jim Harbaugh should be suspended. They put a bounty out on Big Ben. They was trying to kill Big Ben. Big Ben put it out there. I don't know if it was because of San Francisco, who has one of the best defenses in the National Football League, or it was because the Steelers had the worst offensive line in football was the reason why Big Ben got hit so much. And I tell you what, on a heartbreaking note, my boy Chris Carter, who loves being in the media more than Hines Ward, Chris Carter says he put a bounty out in his day on Bill Romanowski because Bill Romanowski said that he would take Chris Carter out before the game. Chris Carter, first of all, Bill Romanowski's style of play, he wanted to take everybody out. This is a guy that hasn't missed a game in 16 years. He was a great player. He's never going to make it to the National Football League Hall of Fame, unfortunately, even though he had a Hall of Fame career because he admitted taking steroids. But Bill Romanowski will go down in history as one of my all-time favorite linebackers. So, hey, bounty is live and well in the National Football League. Stay away from Big Ben.
Chip, what's on your mind?
Well, to get started, I'd like to take a little cue from Alan, and I want to plug something that my wife and I are raising money for. On June 10th, we're going to be walking in the March for Babies. It's run by the March of Dimes, and we are collecting money to donate to a worthy cause. The March for Babies helps with at-risk pregnancies and tries to work on helping with healthier pregnancies and helping to make more healthy babies. We are accepting donations for the March for Babies, and if you're interested in donating, any donations would be appreciated. You could go to the marchforbabies.org /I am Chipper, and you could support the Hayner Angels team. Enough for that, but what's on my mind is, once again, the cloud of drugs and the drug testing program is still hanging over Major League Baseball, and it's making Bud Selig look like a real idiot. So they got an unfavorable ruling to Major League Baseball with the Ryan Braun thing. And, the arbitrator ruled against the Major League Baseball and, and ruled against his suspension. So now they fired him because they didn't give him the answer that they wanted, which really speaks to the integrity of the program. And because of the same reasons that Ryan Braun was absolved, another gentleman who was suspended for 100 games, his suspension has now been lifted because he tested positive for something that they find in child's cough medicine, which, you know, if you know that you're going to be tested, I don't understand why you would even be messing around with something like that. As a professional athlete, you know you're going to be tested. It's your responsibility to know what's going in your body. You know, to come across and say, well, I didn't know that what was in there, then you shouldn't have put it in your body because you're getting paid millions, and some of these guys tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. I would think it would be in your best interest to know. And on a final note, the trial of Roger Clemens is crawling through its fourth week. And the thing I find most interesting about it, besides that there's no new news coming out of it, is that now they're dismissing jurors for falling asleep in the jury box. You know, how is anybody ever going to convict him if they keep this trial going on for another 6 weeks? And they're not going to have any jurors left, okay? But I mean, I don't see how anybody can stay awake for 8 hours with the dull, drab, boring technical aspects. I bet you most of the jurors don't even know why they're there right now. They've probably forgotten who's on trial. They need to make this go away, and the United States government has wasted millions of taxpayers' dollars that could be better spent on education or something more worthwhile. But we're gonna crucify Roger Clemens because he lied to Congress. What a joke.
Yeah, but Chip, I got to interrupt. The one point that you forgot to bring up is the star witness, Andy Pettit, didn't testify against Roger Clemens when he had the chance. He didn't point out any of that was true. So the government lost their case right then and there. Now they're just trying to save face. Well, it's not going to work out. And I don't know if you guys saw the Yankee game when Andy Pettit was pitching. He gave up about 6 runs and was losing, and they took him out of the game. He got a standing ovation. They love him now. He didn't crucify Clemens. He's a hero again, and he come back to baseball. And that was what was really on my mind, Mike.
Well, you know, Al, Andy Pettit's older than God, so only giving up 6 runs isn't really all that bad. And Chip, Bud Selig stopped the All-Star game and decided to have a draw. Okay, you don't need the cloud of drugs and steroids to make him look like an idiot. Yeah. He does well enough on his own.
I agree.
That's not right.
What's not right?
You're half and half down there. You talked about me last week. Look at that.
Well, did I set up the lighting?
Jeez.
So, anyway, what's on my mind is, well, Roger Clemens is one of my all-time favorite baseball players, and I've got a soft spot, I guess, for pitchers because my all-time favorite baseball player is Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan had 7 no-hitters. Wow. The next closest guy had 4.
Wow.
Nolan Ryan struck out more than 5,000 batters. Okay? A major league record. He, I think, was the greatest pitcher of all time. But when Nolan Ryan went into the Hall of Fame, he didn't go into the Hall of Fame on a unanimous ballot. So you got to stop and think. Okay, in fact, nobody goes in on a unanimous ballot. Hank Aaron, who had more home runs than anybody in history at that time, did not go in on a unanimous ballot. So you got to ask yourself, who are these morons that vote for this? How can you vote against Nolan Ryan or Hank Aaron? You know who it is? It's sports writers. All right, sports writers who have no idea what they're talking about. All you do is talk. They write, they watch the game, but usually they've never played the game. Why are these people voting on who goes into the Hall of Fame? And it's not just baseball, it's every sport. Okay? Baseball, football, whatever, there should be a guideline as to, okay, if you've got this many home runs, you've had this kind of batting average over your season, over your career, or for pitchers, you've got this kind of ERA, this many wins, whatever. These guidelines should be set in here, like these are people that should go into the Hall of Fame. Now, there are people that, you know, maybe didn't reach those milestones but still deserve to be in, and it's pretty obvious when you've watched them play. You know people who should be Hall of Famers and people who should not. One of the reasons that I have to bring this up is that when I went to the Hall of Fame for the first time, Bill Mazeroski was not yet a member of the Hall of Fame. But when I walked in and I was paying for a ticket, there was a monitor right above the ticket booth, and the only thing that you saw over and over and over was Bill Mazeroski's home run. But they didn't feel like he deserved a plaque at that time. Right? People need to rethink this, okay? Whoever goes to the Hall of Fame, whoever runs the Hall of Fame, maybe the people who are already in should be the ones to vote for who's going to join them.
Absolutely. I second that notion right there, Mike, 100%. Even Ty Cobb, okay, one of the greatest, Honus Wagner, these guys weren't unanimous selections into the Hall of Fame. But yeah, I think they should take it out of the sports writers' hands because the sports writers have an axe to grind in most cases. They get upset with something somebody says, they've been offended, and they're going to bury them. Jim was talking about Chris Carter, and Chris Carter, once again, he opened his mouth and inserted his foot. And I think what he's done it now, finally, even though he pissed off some sports writers so that they weren't voting for him for the Hall of Fame. And if you look at his statistics over his career, he's got Hall of Fame numbers. But after this last rant, I'm sure they're never going to make sure he gets into the Hall of Fame. Why does he have to even bring up the fact that he put out a bounty? He should have just kept his mouth shut and been humble. Maybe he gets into Canton one of these days. But I think after what he said last week, that nobody's ever going to vote for him.
Chris Carter's a lot like Ben Roethlisberger, and that he can't stand to not be in the media for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. If there's not a story about Roethlisberger, he'll give you one. Believe me, he'll tell you about how he played this last season, needed an open heart surgery. Or, he had a broken leg the whole time. Maybe his arm had been amputated, but nobody really knew it because he played so well. I mean, these guys love to have media coverage, so they'll come out of the woodwork with just about anything. But as far as like the Hall of Fame balloting, you hear people like sports writers say, oh, well, this guy, he's not a first ballot Hall of Fame. What does that mean? You either played well enough to be in the Hall of Fame or you didn't. I mean, I'm not going to vote for him this year, I'll vote for him next year. How stupid is that? They should fire they should have picked up the ballots. Anybody who didn't vote for Nolan Ryan should never vote again.
That's right. That's right.
Mike, I just have a question, though. Who would you put in charge of all of this? Because look at the people, I think you're calling them idiots, basically.
Me?
Yeah, I sort of got that sense of this. So are we going to be the panel to decide on that? Or who would you have come up with the criteria?
Seriously, what I would do is,
I'm asking seriously.
Somebody is the manager or the commissioner or whatever of the Hall of Fame. I put them in charge. But the people that I would have vote for it would be the players who are already in the Hall of Fame. Right? They probably have a pretty good idea of what they think should be, a Hall of Fame career.
Well, I agree with you, and I always thought they should make some changes. I just wanted to know who would do it. That's a good starting point. But then you're going to have so much backlash with all these writers. Look, one of your favorite writers just made the Hall of Fame as a sports writer. I don't know if you're aware of that. Did you realize that, Mike?
Well, you know what? I mean, the Hall of Fame is a sports writer. What is that? That's like being those virtuous hooker on Liberty Avenue.
No, you know what? Well, now that we're talking about the Hall of Fame, here's a question I want to ask. Like if we're going to determine that that there's going to be a governing body or an individual that will determine what the criteria is for a Hall of Fame caliber career, somebody that's eligible to be voted in. What about, does their off-the-field behavior, should that weigh in as to what they accomplished in their career? Because I know some of the characters have done some things that have hurt the sport, and should that be weighed against them when they're evaluating for the
Chip, you
Hall
bring
of
up
Fame?
a great point, because I feel Shoeless Joe Jackson should be in the Hall of Fame because he didn't even know what fixing a game was. He couldn't read, but he could hit. They copied his batting style all over the place. From Babe Ruth, he copied Shoeless Joe Jackson's style, and so did a lot of others. He was one of the best hitters ever. So they should have some criteria. But one thing I will say, if you bet on your team and you bet against your team and you manage your team while you're making these bets, I don't think you can make it to the Hall of Fame.
I disagree. I absolutely think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame because no matter who he bet on or bet against or whatever, he still has the most hits than any player in the game. And that, I think you should be in the Hall of Fame based on your on-field performance. I mean, look at the scumbags that are in there. All right, but there, I mean, O.J. Simpson's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point. I was
Well,
bringing
and
up
O.J.
West
Simpson
Hall
was
of Fame
elected
people.
into the Hall of Fame before he murdered anybody, as far as we know.
Right, but you don't.
He's never been guilty.
You don't put him out
what is
because of
that?
that.
He's
I
in it.
think again because it should be based on your on-field performance, what you did for the game, as far as just your performance, your statistics, the way you played, that kind of thing. As far as what you do in the off season, or what you do, whether you rape people in the bathroom, or whether you kill a couple of people, your ex-wife and some other guy or whatever. Even though I mean, you should go to jail for that stuff, but I don't think it should take you out of the Hall of Fame because you're still a great quarterback or a great running back or the best hitter in baseball ever or whatever. I mean, what you did on the field is what the Hall of Fame is about.
Well, and to speak to the Pete Rose issue, and Alan brought up Shoeless Joe. And Shoeless Joe Jackson was caught up in the Black Sox scandal in 1919. And, here's a guy whose career batting average was, I believe, in the high 340s, almost 350, which, is kind of unheard of for an entire career. And, baseball set a precedent when they banned him from baseball for life. And to this day, here it is, 93 years later, he still won't be elected into the Hall of Fame. And because that precedent has been set, and, Pete Rose broke that golden rule, that taboo. And, since they have precedent set, I think before they should let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, they should let Joe Jackson in and, and make it, equal footing. But, he rolled the dice and he lost. And, they'll make sure that he won't get into the Hall of Fame until well after he's passed away.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
That's where it come from.
But Pete Rose, I agree with Magic Mike that Pete Rose should have been in the Hall of Fame. This guy was an inspiration to a lot of baseball fans. Charlie Hustle, he could hustle, played well, all-star games, he didn't care. 4,000 hits, I don't think anybody will surpass that record. And granted, he gambled on a game while he was a manager, but that should not take away from what he did on the field. And once a guy's in, they don't take him out. Lawrence Taylor's gotten in a lot of trouble after his playing days, and you guys mentioned O.J. Simpson and some others. So, I think the Pete Rose should be in based on, what he accomplished on the field, which was tremendous.
Well, that's one of the things that it's not a standard. It used to be, do you have integrity? That's part of what Judge Landis brought to the game when he threw Shoeless Joe and the other guys out. Because you had gamblers that were right there with the teams. They would own teams, they would bet teams, everything else. And they had to clean up the sport, but they went too far because Judge Landis didn't want to hear anything else. But that's history. What you have now is you don't have anybody with the intestinal fortitude to make the decisions like you guys are saying. If it's purely performance, then I'll agree with Charles Barkley that they aren't role models. So let's make them emperor. We'll just make them the gladiators. If that's the best gladiator out there, performance should count. And if you're a defensive player, that's what I worry about, Mike. Guys like our hero with Bill Mazeroski. What about these defensive stars that hit, in the 200s, don't have a whole lot of home runs, but what's the criteria there?
Well,
that's one of the things.
Big drawback is that he never really had a high batting average. He was probably the best fielding second baseman to ever play the game. But that was his big knock, was that he didn't produce the offensive numbers. Yeah, he had the moment in the 60 World Series. But, I mean, just his defense. And he should have gotten into the Hall of Fame based on his defensive abilities alone, regardless of the seventh game of the 60 World Series. He was just really amazing to watch. He turned a double play like nobody else.
You brought up double plays. Now, look at assists in basketball. They'll talk about assists. So why wouldn't you put a category with double plays? He's turning a double play, especially the second baseman. That's one of the toughest plays. And he had more than anybody, I think. So that might be one of the criteria. We need to be on that panel. Where's this commissioner with the Hall of Fame? We'll volunteer our services.
The thing with Mazeroski, even though, he definitely should have been based on just on his defensive play alone. Everybody that knows anything about baseball knows he was the greatest fielding second baseman ever. But even if that wasn't true, his at bat in the 1960 World Series is the most famous at bat in the history of baseball. That alone should have got him into the Hall of Fame just because of what it is.
It was the first time it ever happened.
That's like
Right.
That's what people dream about when they're little
Bottom
kids.
of the ninth, World
inning,
Series.
boom.
Yeah.
Great point.
But that's something, but as far as, like I said, if you're a Major League Baseball player and you're in the Hall of Fame, you probably recognize that Mazeroski should have been in there like years ago, not just when he was. And it's good that they eventually decided to go ahead and vote him in. I had heard that when he was with like the old timers vote or whatever, that Ted Williams actively campaigned against him being in because he wanted to get Phil Rizzuto in first,
Sure.
Who was, I guess, a friend of his or whatever. Fortunately, Ted Williams died, and Mazeroski was able to get in. So, I guess he was still alive, but he was sick. He wasn't able to get to that vote.
Yeah.
But
and then his head was separated from his body for other reasons.
Isn't he still in the
I don't know
refrigerator
if a frozen head makes you any smarter or not, but I'm no big fan of Ted Williams here. Sorry.
One of the greatest hitters of all time.
Based on what?
The last 400.
What about all the guys that hit 400 before him?
Well, he's a military man like you. If he didn't serve in the military and missed out to help our country during World War II or even the Korean War, he would have had more years and more stats. They would have been unreal. He might have hit 400 a couple more times.
Maybe. Nap LaJoie hit 435.
I can go through the history books too. They don't all get in.
All right. So I think that's a better hitter than a 400 hitter. It's just me, but anyway,
I said the last 400
I think Ted Williams is the most overrated player in the history of baseball. You know what he never did? He never stood in the box against Bob Gibson or Don Drysdale, who would have threw a ball through his head. Right. He wouldn't have hit his weight against Nolan Ryan. And a frozen head doesn't weigh much. But anyway, that's just
we
that's
digress.
beside the point. I guess we'll turn it over.
Hey, call in 412-833 or 831-3304. Again, 412-831-3304. If you like the discussion or you have an opinion on Ted Williams' head, give us a call.
Yeah, call in and tell us who you think should be in the Hall of Fame that isn't.
Well, while we're on the baseball note, Alan mentioned, surprised. Pirates are 17-18. They're playing the Miami Marlins, and the Pirates are a very exciting team to watch. I was down at the game Saturday night, really enjoyable game. Charlie Morton pitched, and I really didn't think he pitched one of his better games. But he only gave up 2 runs. The Pirates put 5 across. It was it was a win. Pedro Alvarez, started producing in the number 4 slot. Here's Sunday afternoon, Mother's Day. We get to the bottom of the 9th inning. Jose Tabata walks. Neil Walker pulls a double down the right field line. So we got runners at second and third with McCutchen coming up, no outs. They walk McCutchen so that they could get to Alvarez. What does Alvarez do? He flies out deep to left to score the tying run. Okay, so he produced. He came through. And these little things like this are are starting to get his confidence back. And this is the player that they thought they were going to get when they signed. And he's playing excellent defense in the field. He's much more comfortable. He doesn't look like a deer in the headlights anymore. And I think moving Neil Walker up to the second spot in the lineup and moving Presley down. Presley's been struggling. I think Presley will be a better batter in the lower portions of the order. But, with Tabata, Walker, McCutchen, and Alvarez as your first 4 batters, that could turn out to be a pretty nice little starting lineup to get them going. Casey McGee's been solid at first base. And, Pirates are going to be very much fun to watch as the year goes on. Even the games that they're losing, they're in. I heard some statistics on the way over here. The Pirates have played in 16 one-run games. They're 9-7. They're on the positive end of that. And in games where they have been leading after the 6th inning, they're 11-0, which speaks to what their relief pitching is doing. Jason Grilli has been doing an amazing job. Joel Hanrahan's been solid. Tony Watson. There's contributions from everybody on the team, and I think they're headed in the right direction. And it's going to be enjoyable watching them as the season progresses.
How was that Hanrahan bobblehead?
Oh, it's bouncing around.
I thought you'd bring it in for us to enjoy on the show. You could put it on the desk. But the Pirates are playing a nice brand of baseball. If you would have thought that you could hit such a low batting average and still do what they're doing. I got an update on the score. Buccos 1, Miami 0, from the biggest fan and the second biggest fan. So, but that's the update. But anyhow, look at McCutchen. Here we were worried about whether he was heartless or gutless. He pulled himself out of a game. He had a stomach virus. Then he hit a home run, and what did he start doing? 4 for 4. I think he was 5th in the league the other day when I checked. I might be wrong because I missed a day or so.
And he's batting about 339, which is really respectable. He's been consistent, and now there's somebody they can't just walk McCutchen all the time anymore now because they tried that the other day. Alvarez came through, so you got a bat behind him, somebody that can sting the ball. So you put McCutchen on the bases, and he's fast. Now, the one thing about the Pirates that I really would like to see being that we play the kind of ball that we play, where we don't score a lot of runs. An area that they could use significant improvement in is the Pirates have 16 stolen bases this year, okay, and they got to rely on their speed and generating runs. But they've been caught stealing 15 times, and they got to get those numbers to change.
Chip.
The number of steals that they
Chip, they're batting and they're stealing, and just their play is terrible there. But think about the league. The division they're in is so bad that's why they're doing this.
5 games separate first place and last place in,
Right.
in Central Division.
So your level of competition,
But,
they're not doing that well.
But they're all major league teams, and that's the way they're playing. So you know what? We're playing as well as the rest of the teams in the major league. So
I'm looking for 101 good games this year. That's my goal. So far, we got 35 in the
I'm
hopper
still
here.
focused on 82.
Good games. Oh, I already collected the dollar. That dollar's coming over here. I can feel it.
But hey, last week we had somebody call in and ask us about the Pittsburgh Passion, and the Passion destroyed the Toledo Rain on Saturday. They beat them 71, I think, to 15.
Wow.
They're 4-0 right now, and I'm just wondering, is there any competition out there for those ladies? I want to tip my hat to them and keep on rocking.
And I'll be at the game Saturday night.
And where is this game at? Because I was supposed to go to the game. The techno granny who called and talked to you last week, she said, Al, do you want tickets to the game at Couple Stadium? I said, it can't be there. If you listened to Smoking Jim Frazier last week, he's probably announcing the game in Ambridge. So is that where it's at?
Well, the game Saturday the 19th is in Ambridge.
Okay, thank you. That's this Saturday.
This Saturday.
And I wanted to tell you that the Passion for Life Foundation is now joining our Hugathon Pittsburgh as one of the groups. So you may be helping me out, my friend, with some of the things that we're doing, because I just wanted to announce that. That's official now. And they're going to be one of our charitable organizations.
Well, I'm going to do some interviews in the locker room after the game, so I'll be doing some hugging.
Well, try to get some pictures. If you have your assistant Robin with you taking pictures and interviews, have her take those pictures and send them to me, and I'll put them on our Hugathon Facebook page.
China.
We'll have China help.
The call last week was from, like Al said, the techno granny there. She called in to ask if the Passion's quarterback was good enough. What did you say its score was?
71 they put up on them.
I'm thinking she's probably okay.
Yeah, I saw the score for that game the next day, and I just started. I had to laugh because they just steamrolled them. I mean, what was it, like a scrimmage or something? Well, I guess the other team was trying, but
here's the other question for Smokin' Jim, since he watches this stuff. One of the things she was saying is, and I told her again, there couldn't be only 15 players on the bench. I said, usually you have 11 on each side, or maybe a couple are playing both ways. But there's no way they had under 20 players.
Well, maybe they had 15 players on the bench, not counting the 11 that was out on the field.
She said they saw it just on the bench, and I said there's no way that the team was that small. And they didn't get tired. They got beat.
maybe they got lost on the way there.
Well,
the GPS turned them into the river.
You mean the Cleveland team? So, I just think they got beat. That's what happened. And Lisa, the quarterback's doing well. I've read a couple write-ups, and I'm sure Smokin' Jim will write a new article about her. And
well, it looks like we're going to have
status.
another champion in the City of Champions, and that's let's tip our hats to them and make an acknowledgement. Man, they're 4-0, and it doesn't seem like there's any competition out there for them.
Hey, and I'll join you on June 2nd. You going to be at the game June 2nd there? I think they're in Pittsburgh at Couple Stadium.
Possibility.
Okay, well, then we'll both
No,
give
June
them.
2nd, I'll be in Erie. I'm sorry. I'll be in Erie on
Al
June
can't
2nd.
wait to go to a couple states.
Meanwhile, that was one of my dad's friends. Come on.
I'll be in pro boxing in Erie on
Really?
June,
What's going on there?
June 2nd. Samantha Griffin, female boxer, be fighting in Erie, along with Faz Freddie Latham, making his pro debut in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Is it in a casino by any chance up there? Or?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it's going to be, but I'm sure I'll find it.
Is it
All
Acre Show?
I'm not sure if it's Acre Show or not. I'll let you know. I just got the
likes that one
I just got the
hotel
phone
down there.
call. I just got the phone call.
We'll get an update from
so,
you next week.
Yeah, next week I'll have more
You
information.
give us that report on the Passion, too.
I sure will. Be happy to. And there's another pro show if people like boxing. Lightning Rod Salka is fighting in Green Tree Sports Complex on June 23rd. I'll be in the house for that.
You know what? That's
Is
my
that
old
Acre Show?
Huh?
Is that Acre
I'm
Show?
not
I know
sure.
He does Salka.
Does he? I'm
Smoking
not
Jim.
sure.
That's my old neighborhood. I grew right up across from there, across the Parkway, and a house over there. I could see that Green Tree complex from my house.
Wow, you grew up in the tough neighborhood of Green Tree.
That was not Green Tree's not a tough neighborhood. No problem. We'll talk about that off air.
The mean streets.
They weren't that mean in Green Tree, okay? So we don't mean that.
Woo!
Just a nice neighborhood. We'll come over to the complex there. It's a nice complex up there.
You know how heavy crime is in Green Tree? If you get a parking ticket, the SWAT team surrounds your car.
Hey. It's a great community. Had a great life there. And what can you say? I'll go back home and see Smoking Jim up there on the 23rd in action.
Thanks,
You would travel all the way to Green Tree from here.
I travel far.
Go back.
Without a GPS.
No GPS there. Not a problem.
So last night, the Oklahoma City Thunder took apart the Los Angeles Lakers in the first round of the playoffs. The Heat, took care of the Pacers in the first game. They started out slowly, and LeBron and Dwayne Wade, put them away as the game went on. I'm surprised with Philadelphia. They're tied with Boston in one game each, and we got the San Antonio Spurs. I think the playoffs are starting to shape up a little bit, and I don't think I think there's some teams out there that could beat the Heat. Chris Bosh is injured. He's
win.
out. We shall see. I think otherwise.
Hey, one question, Chip. Did you see that Boston game towards the end? I was watching it with Kevin Garnett. I don't understand that call with a moving pick when they do that all game. I mean, I was watching the game throughout. There's guys standing in the lane too long, 3, 4, 5 seconds. There's guys sort of like blocking in football because it is a non-contact sport, basketball. But what they called him for, I don't think they should have called him for, and I wonder what the score would have been then. So, again, somebody got in the way. The referee, I don't think he should have made that call at that time with the way the game was being played all game. So, just my opinion there.
Well, I tell you what, I was watching Game 7 with Memphis and who was it? Memphis and the LA Clippers, and I'm telling you what, that looked like street thug ball if I've ever seen.
Yeah, there were guys.
They were
getting
clubbing each other senseless, and I mean, they're not calling any fouls. And I was just like, wow. I mean, I got thrown out of games when I was in junior high school for bumping people. These guys were like jumping on each other's backs and everything. I was like, I guess they're gonna let these guys play.
Chip, we got our basketball expert, Smoking Jim.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of a ticky-tack call like that I'm talking about? Am I wrong or what with Kevin Garnett there? Or did you see it or miss that?
Well, when I was watching Memphis and the Clippers game, I thought it was a pickup game in the mean streets of Green Tree. But
You're
I
killing me.
tell you what, man.
That was assault and battery.
Yeah. Only thing I was looking forward to in these playoffs, and I've been disappointed, thus far, because I thought World Peace would throw another elbow.
Yeah.
Man, you know,
I've been looking forward to that too.
He came back last night against James Harden. You know, it's funny. He came back from his suspension.
But you know what was
plays
amazing?
the guy he knocked out.
Did you see how each quarter they were falling further behind? I thought World Peace would come out and shatter somebody's head, but nothing happened. They were down 30 after 3 quarters. So I mean,
Oklahoma City's got a nice team. They really do. If they don't win the championship this year, which I think they will, they're certainly it's on the horizon for them. They're an up and coming team.
Well, LeBron James already won. He won his third MVP for the NBA, which he joins 7 other guys who had great careers. Only eight people have ever won 3 MVPs. I think this is his year to win a championship. I'm pulling in the West for San Antonio Spurs. DeJuan Blair is the greatest basketball player to come out of southwestern Pennsylvania, other than Terrell Pryor, who I thought was a better high school player. What
about your man?
Who's that?
Armin Gilliam.
Armin Gilliam was a wrestler in high school.
That's right.
Armin Gilliam didn't start playing basketball until his junior year at Bethel Park. When you go to a school like Bethel Park and you're 6'9" black kid, I guess they can encourage you to play basketball. You kind of stick out like a sore thumb.
No, I actually wanted to go to the band and they talked him out of that.
So Armin,
because they did need him there.
Armin went from wrestling and from a great wrestler to a basketball player who was developing. You know, he played 2 years and developed, but he didn't get a scholarship offer and ended up going to a prep school and to do a junior college. And then he went to UNLV, where he's the all-time leading scorer for a season in UNLV history. The Running Rebels, they have more victories his senior year in one season than any other team in college basketball history. And he was the 2nd pick overall in the NBA draft. And they retired his jersey at UNLV. So, and don't forget that his roommates at UNLV was the great Randall Cunningham and Ickey Wood. So them guys had a lot of fun at UNLV.
And how about the coach that led them there, Jerry Tarkanian?
Jerry Tarkanian.
Right.
He didn't mind bending the rules a little bit.
What rules, he said? There were no rules.
It was fun to watch, I tell you that.
Isn't that out in Vegas or something?
Yes,
what
it
happens
is.
there?
That's
supposed to stay there, and it didn't happen that way.
I still can't believe they don't have an NBA team in Vegas, especially with the fouls that the referees are allowed to call late in the game.
Well, it does make you wonder about the sport. I'm glad they fixed the color this week. I'm looking at you. Thanks for wearing the white, because now I see the contrast there. A little GQ moment here for both of us here. If you enjoy that, 412-831-3304.
Ebony and Ivory, baby.
Oh, what were we talking about? Mike, do you have any opinion on that? We're trying to revive you here.
On what?
On anything.
Hey, how about an opinion on the NHL playoffs? You know, we're down to the Final Four. We got the Kings and the Coyotes locking up, and the Rangers and the Devils. I mean, who do you think's going to make it to the finals, and who do you think's going to win it all?
Well, I'll tell you, after the Penguins, my favorite team in the NHL is New Jersey Devils. Always been a big fan of Martin Brodeur. But I think the amazing story this year is the Los Angeles Kings. They barely squeaked into the playoffs on the last day, and like this many teams had to lose for them to get in. They're the 8th seed in the West. They knocked out the number 1 seed in 5 games and the number 2 seed in 4 games.
Wow.
And it looks like they're probably going to make pretty quick work of Phoenix also. A bunch of ex-Flyer players kind of gathered together there at the trade deadline, and they've just been doing a great job. In the East, the New York Rangers are playing the Devils. I believe they're up 1-0 right now. For the NHL, probably the greatest thing that could happen in their best imagination is Los Angeles against New York, the 2 biggest media markets in the country. If that is the Stanley Cup Finals, NHL will get a great boost out of that.
And talking about boost, did you hear what Root Sports did with hockey this year? They had the highest ratings in all of hockey except for Canada. They don't have the stats on that. They even had more people watching hockey games than one of your favorite sports, Smoking Jim, NBA basketball. Wow. They average more fans, so that means a couple things. Maybe you have a great fan base here for hockey, and NBA just doesn't promote themselves well enough during the year, but Root Sports had a fantastic year. I don't know if I can mention them twice or three times.
Wow, I mean, you're saying they had better ratings for hockey than the NBA?
All over the country.
Well, I mean, they here in Pittsburgh, obviously, I mean, of course, there is no NBA team.
That was in general all over the country.
But that's...
The specifics, there's no NBA here.
Well,
they have teams throughout the country.
One of the problems that hockey has always had over the years with trying to get television ratings is it's such a regional kind of a following with them. They don't seem to translate into nationwide popularity. Even the NBA does have more marketability in that sense, and gets more worldwide exposure. Especially with all the merchandise and everything like that. But hockey, for the longest time was a northeastern United States kind of a thing, and southern Canada. And then when they couldn't make any money in Canada, all the teams started moving to the United States so that these guys could start getting some kind of a return on their investment. But I think really hockey really screwed up back in the mid '80s when ESPN used to have the games on television, and they went to a TSN, I think, was a network or something like that. It was a television network out of Canada, and they cut in half.
They screwed
it up.
This
was at a time when the Canadians and the Quebec Nordiques would have bloodbaths every spring in the playoffs because they would play every year. And they were some of the greatest hockey games I ever saw. I mean, for physical activity and, going a little bit beyond what you're supposed to do. Those were great games to watch, but, they got away from it. They got rid of the national exposure, and subsequently they've kind of fallen back into like a, second sister or whatever you want to call them.
They definitely are, but this shows, in general, they had more people watching than anybody in all these NBA cities. That's the point of this, that there were more people watching. So to me, it's a compliment to how Lemieux and his team presents itself as an owner. And look at all the fans. Maybe they counted Mario's TV out there a couple times. But I mean, look at all the people you had. Think about it. You had higher ratings than all the cities that watch the NBA.
Well, how much of an effect do you think that the strike had on the fan reaction? Like after baseball had lost the World Series in 1994. And it took a long time for baseball fans to come back to baseball.
Sure.
I know the NFL players had a strike, but they didn't really lose any games of the season to it, so it really didn't have that much of an effect on them this year. But the NBA, they lost, a portion of the season. They had a 65-game season, compressed it down, and there's backlash. The fans felt like they were, disregarded and shunned by the players and the owners. So they weren't coming out to support the teams as they had in the past.
Well, like Magic Mike always says, "Let's go Pens." But the reason why ESPN, they dropped the ball, or the puck, should we say, with the hockey in the 80s was because the greatest hockey player of all time, Wayne Gretzky, was playing in the 80s. So you should have been able to ride that wave. But, hey, somebody tells me that Malkin is doing pretty good right now, playing some hockey in Russia. Score.
Yes, he is.
He's just continuing on what he did this season. Still think he ought to win the MVP for the year. I mean, hands down, I don't think anybody comes close to
him. They haven't voted on that yet?
No, he should be.
They hold the suspense on that. Plus, they have to see the payoff.
Chip brought up the strikes. The big difference is, like, in the baseball strike in '94, they accomplished nothing. When the NHL lost an entire season to a work stoppage, but when they came back, the game was fixed. There's a lot of parity.
That was great.
All the teams are playing on an equal level now. It's not like a few teams are able to buy everybody and play. Even like the New York Rangers used to buy everybody up and still not play well. But the other teams that could spend a lot of money were the teams that were going to win the Stanley Cup. Right now, there's a salary cap. It's everything's pretty much on an equal level. So that work stoppage actually fixed that game.
Yeah.
It's what baseball needs. The small market owners need to come to the meetings this year and say, what, we're not fielding the team until we have a salary cap.
When you can have the Yankees and the Red Sox have $200 million payrolls, every year, and then you've got the Pirates, and they've got a $55 or $65 million payroll. You know, you can compete for a short period of time, but over the long run, you know, they're always going to get all the big name players. They're going to get all the marketing money, and if that's the case, then they should be sharing it, you know, equally with the rest of the other teams. The NFL really has the system down. You know, there's profit sharing across the board. All the teams have the ability every year to have a chance to win a championship. Now, if they mismanage that, you know, their opportunity to do that, that's their own fault. But I mean, you know, like, you know, for example, the Jacksonville Jaguars have equally as good a chance as anybody else right now. You know, they just got to put the pieces together. But you know, I've always felt that about baseball. That, you know, it's just, you know, you've got 3 or 4 teams that every year you can count on them being in the playoffs because they're spending, you know, $250 million on their payroll, and it's like they're buying themselves, you know, a ticket to the big dance. I think you should have to earn it.
I believe that within 15 years there will be 2 different leagues. A league formed of what are currently called the small market players or small market teams, and a league of what they call the big market teams right now. I believe that there will be a separation happening at one of these collective bargaining agreements. All it really takes is for the small market teams to get together and put their foot down and say, we're not competing with you guys anymore. There's either going to be a salary cap or we're going on our own.
I don't think they can get away with doing that because of the percentages that they have and how you vote, whether you need a 3/4 vote or whatever else to do these things. So that limits it, and that's why the rich get richer. But then how do you spell Chicago Cubs spending all the money they do every year? What does that get them? Look at the teams they've had. How many championships have they won?
Right. Well,
so, I mean, you do beat yourself up.
Well,
just because you have big pockets.
You know, 1908 they were big strong contender.
Just because you have deep pockets doesn't mean you make good decisions.
No, I understand that, but I don't see them changing it that much unless they do spread the wealth around. I don't think they'll split it up like that. They're going to change the divisions again and, you know, who's where and what team goes over here for travel and everything else. But economically, I don't see them doing that yet. There's too much greed with the top teams there.
Right, but there are more small market teams than there are large market teams, and I seriously believe that at one point some of them are going to get tired of it and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. If they would band together, then they would be the ones making the decisions, not the.
And I think there's actually going to be more of an upswing in interest in that Major League Baseball, and I think, you know, with everything that's going on with the NFL right now, and you know, I think it's going to start losing a little bit of its luster, and more people are going to be coming back to baseball. You know, the problems that they've got going on with they're going to micromanage all the fun out of the NFL and everything that makes us all love football. You know, pretty soon, you know, it's going to be two-hand touch. You know, because they're worried about player safety, and I think it's a big joke because, you know, we're worried about player safety, but we got coaches and players that are putting bounties on one another, telling them to kill each other and rip his head off and, you know, put him out of the game. You know, they've got quite a bit of a mess to clean up there.
Well, I got to disagree a little bit, Chip. I mean, you make some great points, but the reason that the National Football League will never come down off their high pedestal and will always sit as the king of the mountain is because it's the easiest sport to gamble on. I mean, you make a fortune gambling all over the country on football, and now you got fantasy football. You got people playing fantasy football all over the place. So football is always going to be popular. The sports bars are always going to be packed, and people are always going to be able to gamble on football. And as long as that's the case, football still be the #1 sport.
Point taken.
Well,
Smoking Jim, excellent.
Point taken, excellent point.
Jim's right. The fact that you can gamble on it very easy is what actually drives the NFL. But the people who are in charge now I think they miscalculate a little bit. They want to clean up the image of the NFL. Well, you know what? All they really have to do is come down out of that stadium one day and walk through the parking lot before the game and see the Neanderthals that actually come and watch the game. Or maybe they won't even go and watch the game. Maybe they just get drunk and stay in their car for the game. But if you see the people that are actually football fans, then you might think maybe we don't have to clean this up any.
Those are good points too, Mike. There's no doubt, because you do have that issue with sometimes, you know, when you go to a game, some people are just falling over drunk, yelling and screaming, and meanwhile it's the player they like, but somehow they got mad at him. They're mad at the player, and you're like, what do you want? That's the guy who just ran for a touchdown.
I honestly believe that they've made professional football as safe as they can make it. I mean, come on. We've got 350-pound men that can run 4.5 40s, and, you're putting armor on them, you can't do much else. I mean, the only thing you could do is if you would, go back to having 180-pound offensive linemen, and you have guys playing pity-pat with one another. But you've got big, huge, monstrous men that run very fast and smash into each other, and I'm sorry, you just can't regulate that the way they would like to. That's like trying to, control a car wreck,
Well, I think you have NFL, and I heard a show the other day. I don't remember the gentleman that invented a helmet that is actually being used in different high schools, colleges, that is supposed to be better than the helmets they do have, but because there's a deal with Rydell, the football helmet maker, that they can't get their foot in the door. But if you notice, and I never noticed this, maybe Smoking Jim or Mike or even Chip noticed it, but Rydell has their brand on the helmet, and they said if you don't see it on there and you see like Steelers covering up where it is, then that's one of this guy's helmets, or it's a special helmet that's a little better or different than the Rydells. So it's something to look for. I heard the show, but I was in between a couple, appointments here, and I didn't take any notes there for you guys. But I'll have to research when I heard that.
Well, the thing is with the head injuries and everything, you can put I don't care what kind of helmet you put on. So you got to put somebody's head in the helmet, And
no, this is the difference with the helmet.
But when a human body is traveling at say 15 miles an hour, and it comes to a sudden stop, there's things in you that still keep moving, and so their brain sloshes up against
Chip,
the front of your skull.
Here's the difference.
But that is going to happen regardless of what kind of helmet.
Yeah, but with the helmet that they've changed, and any of you have played football, when they put air, they put water, different things in the helmet. He says he has a system that it tightens. The helmet fits tighter around your head with the proper protection to be like a shock absorber for that. So that's one of the differences he come up with, because the helmet does move around. Smoking Jim will tell you he didn't suffer too many concussions when he played, but other people have. But it does move around.
But the point is, if you have a helmet like that, or you have a helmet even like the ones that they currently use, if you get banged on the head from something, that will protect you from that kind of concussion. But a concussion is like a bruise on the brain, basically.
Right.
And if you're moving quickly, like if you have a jar with a ball in it, and you go like this, when it stops, that ball is going to hit the side of the jar. All right? So when your head stops, your brain, if your brain's moving with the head, when your head stops, your brain kind of bangs against the inside of your skull. No helmet can protect that. There's no way to stop it. Now, you can get protection from the outside injury, but not from the injury from inside.
Well, they were describing some of it. I'll find out more research on it, but I also heard a doctor talking about it's actually like the yolk in an egg. Shake the yolk in an egg. That's what happens when you get a concussion. That yolk starts to become scrambled. So maybe that's why a couple of your friends can't do interviews and see Obama. Okay? But think about the yolk. That's the same thing that you're doing. That's a great analogy.
Here's the thing that gets me about all this stuff that we're talking about, helmet safety and trying to protect the players and everything. And it's like now all these players, especially you had Junior Seau commit suicide, and nobody knows why he did what he did. And, there's been talks that they're going to test his brain for CTE. And all these players are suing the National Football League because, they weren't made aware of the risks that they were undertaking by playing professional football. I think anybody that with any amount of sense knows that you're assuming a risk when you play professional football. You're going to get a short-term reward, but you're risking long-term health, and when you're a young man, you're not thinking about that. So now you've made that risk, you've rolled the dice, and then you've exhausted all your funds from your playing career. Now you're going to go and sue them and say that, well, you didn't make a safe enough work environment for me to work in. Well, you had a choice to not do that, but you chose to do that, and now you're going to sue the people that paid you And I think it's ridiculous. I don't understand it at all.
It is ridiculous. If you're a player, whether you're a football player or not, if you have to have somebody else tell you that you can get hurt playing football, you're too stupid to live. That's a fact.
Tell us how you really think, Mike.
Mike, in your infinite wisdom, you hit the nail right on the head.
Anyway, I'm going to sue you because you didn't tell me I could get hurt banging my head against somebody else's head.
I heard there was one offensive lineman. I forget who he played for, and he chose not to. He just chose to retire. He'd only been in the year 8 or 9 years, and he said, "You know what? Right now, I can. I want to be able to enjoy life with my children, with my wife, and I don't want to play anymore. I goes, I don't want to be that guy that's sitting there, putting a gun to my chest, or you look at Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell, one of the greatest running backs that ever played the game. The guy can't even walk. Having to play Joe Green twice a year certainly did shorten his career.
3 times a year.
Every year. Kick the door down.
But I mean, you look at what these guys went through. But I mean, hey, he got his rewards, and that's the price you pay for.
Well, one thing we can say is, and me and Magic Mike agrees with this. I think the greatest lineman, maybe the greatest lineman ever played the game, was Mike Webster, and his son is the president and CEO of a company that does studies now on the brain and stuff like that. And they're doing an excellent job. So if you guys, and I think he's still local, Mike Webster's son. So, maybe you can Google that and find out some information on what they're trying to do.
They're trying to make the sport
Maybe
safer from
but
what
like-
I
nice
researched.
guest to
Yeah,
have.
but like Chip said, I
Right.
mean, the game is they tinkered about as far as you can do with the game.
Well, we're winding down on time. I'd like to say that if you offer me $10 million a year for 5 years, you can scramble my brains in the 6th year. I don't care. I'll enjoy those 5 years. How you guys feel on that? I mean, the risk versus the reward. What do you think?
When you're a young man, you're the king of the world. You think you're going to live forever, and I can't say that I wouldn't have taken an opportunity to take that kind of money too. I mean, it's just human nature. Who wouldn't want it?
And I tell you what, I would do it in a heartbeat for my family. You're providing a legacy for your family. And again, I want to continue to say I take my hat off to all these football players who are committing suicide by shooting themselves in the chest to preserve their brain for further study.
That's very considerate of him.
How do I make a comment after that? Holy, that's 2 weeks in a row. That's a stunner. Hey, but I wanted to give you an ACC announcement. Pitt went to the ACC because they signed a new contract. Pitt will make $12 million more, and that'll be a story for next week.
Wow.
So maybe it was a financial move because they aren't going to do that well, as you guys have said, and I agree.
They only got to give $3 million of that to the Hopewell running back.
How many cars? Any tats? What's the deal there? Give us the inside scoop, Scout. Save it for next week. You got to give us a report.
Well, at least there we go. He won't get. Actually, he probably won't get the same media coverage he would have gotten in the Big East with the New York markets and stuff like that. But that's their move. Going to the ACC, like Al said, is going to bring him a lot more money in.
$12 million.
So I mean, that's the way it went. That's pretty much it for us this week. Tune in next week. We'll have another great show. And Mike Webster's son sounds like an interesting guest. Maybe we'll get out of the producing machine to find out how to get him on. Anyways,
I'll
thanks
do
a lot.
some research as the talking machine, and I'll see what I can do.
Let's go Bucks. Let's go Bucks.
Nice, Chip.
We'll
Hopefully
see.
they get 500 this week, brother.
We'll see you next week.